I watched Marcus walk into the office that Monday morning with his usual swagger. He carried himself like he owned the place, shoulders back, head high, designer shoes clicking against the polished floor. I sat at my desk, coffee in hand, observing. 3 years. I had worked with Marcus for 3 years at Westbrook Capital, a mid-sized investment firm downtown. 3 years of watching him get promotions he didn't deserve, projects he didn't work on, and credit for ideas that weren't his. But that Monday was different. That Monday everything changed. He stopped at my desk, that familiar smirk spreading across his face. His expensive tie caught the morning light as he leaned down, making sure people could hear him. "Still renting that apartment, I see," he said, gesturing at my old Honda in the parking lot. "Don't worry, not everyone can make it to homeownership." His friends laughed. I forced a smile, said nothing. He had no idea what I owned. He had no idea about any of it. My name is Victoria Pierce, and I'm 34 years old. I grew up poor, the kind of poor where you count your coins before buying milk. My parents worked 2 jobs each, and even that wasn't enough. I watched my mother sacrifice everything for my education, staying up late at the kitchen table helping me with homework after 12-hour shifts. I promised myself I would never be that desperate again. I promised myself I would build something real. By the time I turned 25, I had saved enough for a down payment on my first rental property. It was a small duplex on the east side of the city, nothing fancy. But it was mine. I managed it myself, understanding every expense, every repair, every tenant. I didn't brag about it. I didn't need to. Within 5 years I had purchased 4 more properties, each one carefully selected, each one generating steady income. I kept my investments quiet, worked my regular job at Westbrook, and built my portfolio in silence. Marcus didn't know because I never told him. I never told anyone. Marcus Thompson came to Westbrook 2 years after I did. He arrived with an expensive education, a wealthy family, and zero work ethic. I noticed immediately. While I stayed late analyzing market trends and building presentations, he spent his afternoons at the gym or in the break room flirting with the administrative assistants. Yet somehow he climbed. He climbed because he talked a good game. He climbed because my boss, Derek, saw in him a reflection of himself. 2 men who looked the part without doing the work. Within 18 months, Marcus had been promoted to senior analyst. I was still an analyst. I had done better work, smarter work, work that actually made the company money. But I was a woman. And perhaps I was too quiet. Perhaps I didn't talk loudly about my accomplishments. Perhaps I made the mistake of letting my work speak for itself. The first time he took credit for my project was subtle. I had spent weeks creating a portfolio analysis for the Henderson account. I presented it to Derek. Days later, Marcus walked into a meeting and presented the same analysis. Same numbers, same conclusions, same formatting. Derek congratulated him. He had copied my entire presentation and claimed it as his own discovery. I didn't confront him that day. I didn't confront him the next day either. I watched, documented everything in a private folder on my personal laptop. Email timestamps, presentation dates, my own notes from when I'd created the work. I kept building evidence like I was gathering bricks for a wall. This was strategic. This was calculated. My life had taught me that revenge served cold is always better than revenge served hot. 2 months later it happened again. I created a risk assessment for the Caldwell Foundation. Marcus presented it. This time he even added his name to the document header. I screenshot it. He saved it. I built my case quietly while he celebrated. My coworkers started to notice, whispering in the break room about how lucky Marcus was to have so many good ideas. My manager started to overlook me. "Marcus really has a gift for analysis," Derek said once in front of me, as if I wasn't standing there. I felt something inside me harden. Not anger exactly. More like determination. I realized then that winning at Westbrook wasn't my goal anymore. Westbrook was too small for what I had planned. One evening after Marcus left the office, I opened my property portfolio on my personal laptop. 5 buildings now. 32 rental units. Monthly income that exceeded my Westbrook salary by 3 times over. I had been so focused on climbing at the company that I had forgotten to appreciate what I'd already built outside these walls. My properties were generating wealth, real wealth, while I sat here watching Marcus take credit for work that didn't even matter. That night I made a decision. I would leave Westbrook. Not immediately. Not rashly. I would leave on my terms, with a plan, with purpose. But first I needed to know something. I needed to know where Marcus lived. Took me 30 minutes of research. A mutual connection on LinkedIn mentioned his apartment complex. Riverside Towers, a luxury building on the north side of town. I knew that building. I had looked at purchasing it 2 years ago. I decided against it because the building management was poorly run. But I still had the list of its properties. Pulled up my files. I started calculating. That night changed everything. Riverside Towers had 24 units spread across 6 floors. The owner, a man named Henry Graves, had owned it for 7 years but rarely stepped foot in the building. The management company handled daily operations, and from my research they handled them badly. The building had a reputation for maintenance issues, slow responses to repairs, and frustration among tenants. I spent 3 weeks researching Henry Graves. I learned his investment philosophy, his financial situation, his goals. I discovered he had recently inherited another property and wanted to sell Riverside Towers to focus on his new acquisition. He was looking for a buyer. On a Tuesday morning I called his office. We talked for an hour. He was tired, overwhelmed, ready to be done with the property. I made an offer that was fair but not overly generous. He wanted to accept immediately, but I slowed things down. I wanted time to conduct proper inspections. I wanted time to verify everything. I hired an independent inspector, reviewed maintenance records, interviewed tenants. Everything took time, but I was patient. I had learned patience from years of building my investment portfolio. By the end of 6 weeks, I had purchased Riverside Towers. The paperwork was done quietly. The title was in the name of my LLC, Northern Star Properties. Marcus had no idea his building now belonged to me. I took over management immediately. The previous management company was fired. I hired a new team, people I had worked with before on my other properties. I installed new systems for maintenance requests. I upgraded the common areas. I began the slow work of making the building functional, comfortable, and properly maintained. But I did something else too. I quietly investigated every current tenant, including Marcus Thompson in Unit 407. I reviewed his lease. I reviewed his payment history. I reviewed his behavior as documented in the building complaints. Nothing was amiss. He paid his rent on time. He didn't break any lease violations. He was, by all accounts, a model tenant. But I was patient. I was building something, and it didn't require him to do anything wrong. It required time. It required access. It required me to own the place where he lived. I began making subtle changes. Nothing dramatic. Nothing he could complain about. But I began laying the groundwork for what was coming. I upgraded the building's security system and installed cameras in common areas. I added my personal number as emergency contact for the building. I made myself visible, always in professional attire, always checking on things, always present. Meanwhile, at Westbrook Capital, things were changing. Derek had brought in new senior leadership. A woman named Patricia became the new director of our division. Patricia was sharp, methodical, and most importantly, she knew real work when she saw it. She started reviewing all our recent projects, auditing everything. Within 2 weeks, she noticed the inconsistency. My name was on the research. My name was on the original documents. But Marcus was presenting the work. Patricia called me into her office and asked me directly about 3 specific analyses. I brought my documentation. I brought timestamps. I brought the emails where I had shared the preliminary findings with Marcus. I brought my original presentations. Patricia listened carefully. She didn't interrupt. When I finished, she leaned back in her chair and nodded slowly. "How long has this been happening?" she asked. 2 years, I said quietly. Patricia made a phone call. Within 3 days, an official investigation was launched into Marcus's work at Westbrook. They found 14 instances where he had claimed credit for work done by others, primarily by me. Derek was questioned about why these inconsistencies hadn't been caught. Marcus was suspended pending review. Felt nothing. No triumph, no satisfaction. Just emptiness. Marcus started spending more time at Riverside Towers, which made sense because he wasn't going to the office anymore. I would see him in the lobby sometimes, looking stressed, checking his phone. He'd gained a few gray hairs, I noticed. One evening, I was in the building inspecting the third-floor hallway when I ran into him in the elevator. He looked surprised to see me. "Are you the new manager?" he asked, not recognizing me from outside the office. "No," I said. "I own the building." His face went pale. He stammered something and got off on his floor. I realized then that revenge, true revenge, isn't about big moments. It's about being present while someone realizes what they've lost. It's about them understanding that their comfortable life sits on your foundation. That evening I made a decision about his lease. I would not renew it when it expired in 6 months. It was completely within my rights as the building owner. He had broken no rules. His lease simply would not be renewed. I wanted him to have time to worry, time to scramble, time to realize how fragile his position was. The investigation into Marcus's conduct at Westbrook concluded in his favor, technically. They couldn't prove malicious intent. They couldn't prove he deliberately stole my work. They could only prove that credit had been distributed incorrectly. He was required to attend ethics training and assigned a mentor. But the damage was done. Derek was questioned about his management style. Patricia remained firm that proper credit needed to be given going forward. Marcus's promotion trajectory stopped. He would never climb higher at Westbrook. He had reached his ceiling. 2 weeks later, Marcus was called into Derek's office with Patricia present. He was reassigned. Demoted though not officially. His projects would be smaller, his responsibilities reduced, his authority limited. He was now the peer of people he had been supervising. It was a quiet destruction of his career, but it was destruction nonetheless. He came home that day, and I watched from my office in the building lobby as he walked past, looking broken. That night, I sat in my apartment across the city and realized something important. I had wanted him to suffer at work. But I had already won there. What was happening now was different. Now I was just being cruel. I hadn't planned to do anything else. I truly hadn't. But then something unexpected happened. 3 months into the investigation, Patricia called me into her office with a job offer. She wanted me to become senior analyst under her leadership. She wanted me to head up a new division focused on sustainable investments. She offered me a salary increase of 40% and stock options. She apologized for Derek's management style. She told me she had reviewed my work and considered it some of the best analysis she had ever seen. I felt tears threaten, but I held them back. I accepted the position. Everything I had worked for at Westbrook was finally happening. But I didn't need it anymore. The money didn't matter. My properties generated more income than this new position would. The recognition didn't matter. I knew the quality of my work. What mattered was that I had finally reached a point where I could choose to leave or stay, based on what I wanted. I decided to stay. Not for Westbrook. Not for Derek or Patricia. I stayed because I had started something with Marcus, something I needed to finish. That evening, I returned home and pulled up the records for his lease. 6 months left. The clock was ticking. Winter came early that year. The building's heating system needed maintenance. It was a legitimate repair that had been scheduled before my ownership, but it had been delayed by the previous management company. I had the work done properly this time, but I scheduled it during the coldest week of the year. All units would have temporary heating during the repairs. It was completely legal. It was completely justified. It was also completely inconvenient. Marcus complained to the new management office. I reviewed his complaint personally. The work was necessary, I explained. The temporary heaters would maintain 65 degrees. The work would be completed in 3 days. Everything was in order. He couldn't do anything about it. A week later, the building's water pressure fluctuated. Again, completely legitimate maintenance issues that needed addressing. I hired contractors to fix the problem. The work took 4 days. Marcus submitted another complaint. Again, everything was legal and necessary. I was simply exercising my rights as a building owner. I was simply maintaining my property. But I was doing it in a way that made his life uncomfortable. I was doing it deliberately. By February, Marcus had submitted 8 maintenance complaints. I responded to every single one with professionalism and documentation. Everything was legal. Every repair was necessary. Every inconvenience was justified. But the cumulative effect was wearing on him. I could see it in how he moved through the building now. His shoulders were hunched. He didn't make eye contact in the elevator. His apartment, which had once been a source of pride for him, had become a source of stress. One evening I received a phone call from him. "I want to break my lease," he said. "The building management is incompetent. There are constant issues." I explained that lease breaking required a violation of the lease agreement by the building owner. I explained that everything I had done was proper building maintenance. I explained that his lease required 90 days notice and payment of a termination fee. I was polite. I was professional. I was immovable. He hung up. Waited. 3 weeks later he served official notice. He would be leaving in 90 days. He paid the termination fee. He was gone. The day Marcus moved out, I was in the lobby reviewing some documents. I watched the moving truck pull up. I watched him carry boxes down, looking exhausted, looking defeated. He didn't notice me. I didn't want him to notice me. This wasn't about confrontation. This wasn't about him knowing what I had done. This was about knowing myself. This was about understanding that I had the power to make someone's life difficult, and I had chosen to use that power. It made me uncomfortable. I realized something standing there watching him leave. Revenge, even when it's completely justified, changes you, hardens you, makes you smaller, not bigger. That evening I sat in my apartment and made a decision. I was done. I was done with Marcus Thompson. I was done with hatred. I was done with using my resources to make someone else miserable. Instead, I would use my resources to build something good. I would use my success for something better than payback. By the end of that year, I had made significant changes at Westbrook Capital. In my new role as head of the Sustainable Investments Division, I had implemented new protocols for project attribution. All work now included clear documentation of who contributed what. All presentations now credited the full team. All analyses now carried team signatures. Derek resisted at first, but Patricia backed me completely. The culture at Westbrook began to shift. People started speaking up about their contributions. Recognition became more distributed. Merit became harder to fake. It wasn't revolutionary. It wasn't earth-shattering. But it was important. Westbrook became a place where good work was actually noticed. 3 months after implementing these changes, I realized something else. I didn't need to work at Westbrook anymore. My properties were generating enough income that I could leave tomorrow and be completely fine financially. My investments were diverse and stable. I had built something real, something independent, something that didn't depend on Derek or Patricia or anyone else's approval. The question became, why was I still here? The answer surprised me. I actually liked Patricia. I actually enjoyed the work. I actually wanted to see my division succeed. 6 months after Marcus left, I received an unexpected email. It was from him. He had found a new job at a different firm. He was trying to rebuild his reputation. He wanted to apologize to me for taking credit for my work. He wanted to acknowledge that I had been right about my contributions. He wanted to know if we could somehow make peace. I read the email 3 times. I recognized it for what it was, an attempt at reconciliation born from his own need to move forward, not from genuine remorse. Still, I responded. I thanked him for the apology. I acknowledged that things had been difficult between us. I wished him well in his new position. I was professional. I was kind. But I didn't pretend we were suddenly friends. I didn't pretend that an email could undo what had happened. I simply accepted his apology and moved on. That evening I looked at my investment portfolio. 5 properties, 32 rental units, millions in assets, a successful career at Westbrook, a network of colleagues and contacts, a life that I had built through careful planning and years of work. Marcus Thompson had mocked me for renting. He had mocked me because he didn't understand what I was building. He didn't understand that people who are truly building something don't announce it. They don't brag about it. They work quietly and let their success speak for itself. A year after Marcus left the building, I decided to renovate Riverside Towers. I upgraded every unit. I painted the hallways in warm colors. I installed new lighting in the lobby. I created a small garden space on the rooftop. I transformed the building from a place people tolerated into a place people actually wanted to live. The building became known for its excellent management, its responsive maintenance, and its community atmosphere. Tenants stayed longer. Rental rates increased. The property's value doubled. My investment in buying the building from Henry Graves had been entirely strategic, but it had also created something genuinely good. People were happy living there. Families felt safe. Communities were building. I had taken a building that was poorly managed and struggling, and I had made it a place where people thrived. That felt good. That felt right. More right than watching Marcus suffer had ever felt. 2 years after the investigation at Westbrook, Patricia offered me a partnership track. I was being asked to consider becoming a partner in the firm. It meant more money, more authority, and more responsibility. It meant staying. It meant committing myself fully to Westbrook's future. I asked for time to think about it. That evening, I sat down with my mentor, Dr. Elizabeth Hayes, a woman who had guided my investments from the beginning. She had been a successful investor herself and had retired to focus on mentoring young professionals like me. I told her the whole story. I told her about Marcus. I told her about my properties. I told her about Westbrook. I told her about the partnership offer. She listened without judgment. When I finished, she asked me a simple question. What do you want? I realized I had never asked myself that question. I had spent so much time focused on building and achieving and responding to other people's actions that I had never stopped to think about what I actually wanted. I don't know, I admitted. Then that's where you should start, she said. I took a week off from work. I visited all my properties. I talked to my tenants. I reviewed my finances carefully. I thought about what I had built and what it meant to me. My properties weren't just investments. They were homes for people. They were places where families lived and grew. I had created housing stability for 32 households. I had created jobs for the maintenance staff, the administrative staff, the security staff. I had created wealth that was independent and stable. These were achievements I could be proud of. At Westbrook, I had created systems for attribution and recognition. I had built a division focused on sustainable investing. I had influenced company culture in meaningful ways. These were also achievements I could be proud of. Both things were real. Both things mattered. So did I need to choose? Did I need to pick one life over the other? Or could I do both? I called Patricia and told her I wanted to talk about the partnership offer. I told her I was interested, but I had conditions. I wanted to work 4 days a week at Westbrook instead of 5. I wanted Fridays to manage my property portfolio. I wanted to maintain both my careers. I expected she would say no. Patricia said yes. She said the firm was flexible enough to accommodate my needs. She said having a partner who was also a successful business owner brought perspective and wisdom to their investment decisions. She said she valued me too much to risk losing me. So I became a partner at Westbrook Capital. I maintained my property portfolio. I divided my time between both worlds. On Mondays through Thursdays, I was Victoria Pierce, partner and senior analyst. On Fridays, I was Victoria Pierce, property owner and real estate investor. Both versions of myself were real. Both were necessary. Both were important. The work was demanding, but I had built my life to handle demands. I had learned early that success required sacrifice, careful planning, and patience. I had learned that power came not from being loud, but from being prepared. I had learned that revenge was less satisfying than building something real. 3 years after the investigation, I ran into Derek at a conference. He was there representing Westbrook at an investment panel. I was there as a speaker, discussing sustainable investment strategies. We made small talk. He congratulated me on my success. He told me he had heard about my partnership. He told me he was proud of what I had accomplished. I accepted his congratulations politely, but I realized something talking to him. I didn't feel angry anymore. I didn't feel anything toward Derek except mild indifference. He had mistreated me, undervalued me, and allowed someone else to take credit for my work. But he wasn't my problem anymore. I had moved beyond needing his approval or recognition. I had built my own world where my contributions were valued and my work was recognized. Derek couldn't take that away. He couldn't diminish it. He couldn't even touch it. Power, I realized, wasn't about making others feel small. Power was about building something so solid, so real, that other people's opinions couldn't shake it. My real estate portfolio continued to grow. I purchased a 6th property, then a 7th. Each one was chosen carefully, analyzed thoroughly, and managed excellently. Each one generated steady income. Each one provided housing for families and individuals who needed it. Each one was a piece of the empire I was building. But I also gave back. I created a scholarship fund for young people from low-income backgrounds interested in business and investing. I mentored young women in the real estate industry. I donated to housing nonprofits. I used my success to help others build their own futures. It felt important to transform what had started as revenge into something meaningful and good. The girl who once counted coins before buying milk was now helping other kids get access to education and opportunity. That transformation mattered more than anything Marcus Thompson could have done or not done. 5 years after Marcus left Riverside Towers, I received an invitation to speak at a women's business conference. The topic was Building Wealth Independently. 200 women gathered to hear my story. I told them about my early poverty. I told them about my journey in real estate. I told them about Westbrook. I told them about Marcus taking credit for my work. I told them about the investigation and the consequences. But I also told them the important part. I told them that revenge had felt good momentarily, but building something real had felt good for years. I told them that the best response to being underestimated was to build something so substantial that no one could ignore it. I told them that quiet, consistent work was more powerful than loud accusations. I told them that success measured in your own terms was more valuable than success measured by others' approval. The women in that room understood. They had experienced their own versions of being underestimated, undervalued, and ignored. They had their own Marcuses. But they also had the potential to build their own empires. A year later, I made a decision about my career at Westbrook. I had spent a decade there. I had accomplished everything I had set out to accomplish. I had changed the culture. I had built a successful division. I had become a partner. But I realized my future wasn't at Westbrook. My future was in real estate and investments. I tendered my resignation. Patricia was disappointed but understanding. The firm threw me a going-away party. Derek gave a speech acknowledging my contributions. It was strange to finally hear him publicly recognize my value. But by then I didn't need it. I was leaving to pursue something bigger. I was leaving to build something entirely my own. My last day at Westbrook was emotional but not sad. I was grateful for what I had learned there. I was grateful for Patricia's mentorship. I was grateful for the colleagues who had become friends. But I was ready to move on. I now own a commercial real estate development company. I purchase older buildings in neighborhoods that need revitalization. I renovate them thoughtfully. I lease them to small businesses and nonprofits. I create community spaces. I hire local workers. I contribute to neighborhood development. I generate wealth while building communities. That day Marcus mocked me for renting. He had no idea that I was already planning my future. He had no idea that his mockery meant nothing to me because I was operating on a completely different level. He had no idea that I didn't need his approval or his respect. I had spent years building something he couldn't even see. That's the real power. That's the real victory. Not making someone suffer. Not proving them wrong in a moment of confrontation. But quietly building something so real, so solid, so successful that their mockery becomes meaningless. He mocked me for renting. I responded by becoming the landlord. Not just his landlord but my own landlord. My own boss. My own vision. My own success. And that, I realized, is the part he never saw coming.